Alrighty, here we go. This is episode number 2. I have an exciting topic. A few things if we get before we get started. I'm very soft spoken. I think I improved on the sound. You guys will let me know. Uh, if you feel free to do time 2 times the speed. I take the time to go through my thoughts, especially when they're not like very well prepared. So I don't get offended if you do like 3 times, 2 times. You know, go ahead. Um, this is my second episode. I've been absent for almost a year. I had this goal that I wanted to do more of these, but didn't get to it. We're starting a new year. I think I'm gonna be able to do more of it. So here we go. That's some intro comments. Again, this is for you, Mila and Gabby. This is for anyone that is my friend, anyone that is interested in these ideas. This is for you. And this is for my future self as well. This is for my own edification. I do this because I already stated the reasons. Um, but I always would like to start with that. I am here to talk about my thoughts on the Montessori education. I have hours to go through. But I'm going to try to condense it for the sake of time, for the sake of the people that are coming here. Um, I may do more of these if time allows and my schedule allows it. There is so much valuable to me, to my family, to my daughters. It makes so much sense to share this good word with the world. Um, I'll share my journey. I'll share some general thoughts. I'll share, what's in my mind. I educated myself a ton on the subject, and I have a lot to share with all of you. First thing I think I should share is how did I come across the Montessori educational method. Um, and the story is going to lead into you knowing more about myself, about how I build my philosophical foundations, the person that I become. But how I came across Maria Montessori is I have a very important person that I followed in my life. I read one of her books and it just transformed my life in a very good way. Her name is Ayn Rand. Most people don't know about her. Of those that know about her, most people don't know deeply what she stands for. So we're gonna do a whole episode on this really genius of a woman that just started a movement, right? And it's had the most impact, other than my mom, my upbringing, and everything else that have influenced my life. This is a single author that I think has had the most influence in my way of being. In any case, this lady, Ayn Rand, in one of her many writings, and even came across one of her shows that she did when she became very popular in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken. She mentioned that there's only one educational system that is worth investing time on, that can um, really change the way that we've been doing education. And she said that the creator of these educational system is a genius, and the world, this is what the world should be listening to. And she said, the best educational method for educating kids is what Maria Montessori built. So from that moment on, the decision was already made. This is before I had my kids. I knew that they were gonna go to a Montessori school. I was in for a big surprise. and we'll share more about that. But that's my beginning. That's how I chose the Montessori education, because someone that I trust, her judgment, said, "This is genius. If you have kids, anyone that wants the best education for them," and this is someone that's not doesn't speak lightly. She said those words. I was set on that journey. So when I had my first kid, the first thing I did was research, right? Research wherever I end up. I need to be close to one of these schools. And my wife and I, she was with me on that decision. We decided to look for schools, and we started on that journey. I'm someone who becomes, as you'll know me more, when I become obsessed about something, I like to read and go to blogs and go on X, or what you formerly call Twitter, and just look at all the videos, anyone said about this. Let me just get it all. As a matter of fact, the first thing I went to was Maria Montessori's book. I read it the first time, didn't really get it. I mean, it makes sense what she was saying, but didn't really get it. And then, I started my journey. And it's been an amazing journey. The biggest, I guess, surprise that I came across was this was not only education for my kid, as I thought it was going to be. This was also education for myself. As a matter of fact, I learned over the years that Montessori is, in a way, more about the adults that are driving that educational path than the kids. And that's been a very rewarding surprise, and something that it's also has allowed me to take a turn for the positive in how I see the world and how I enjoy my life. And that's why I'm sharing this with you, because I see it's valuable. I want Gabby, I want Mila to know why I made that decision to take you into this path. So, why does it make sense to me? I'm not gonna put it this way. I'm not going to be like, oh, this is for everyone, and anyone that's doing anything different is wasting their time. I don't think that's the way it is. I come to it from my perspective of, it just makes sense to me. It makes sense to my family, and other people may find it valuable. That doesn't mean it works for every family. So keep that in mind, because I don't want you to get the wrong idea. If you're following a different path, is your path, right? There may be things that I share with you that may be beneficial. There may be others that don't, right? So keep that in mind. So here's what I guess I'm going to try to explain the Montessori method in my own words, and why does it make sense to me. So let's talk about Maria Montessori, because I think that helps explain what this is. Long story short, I'll summarize it for you. She was the first medical doctor to graduate from medical school in Italy. So you can imagine what she had to go through. She's essentially a scientist, and a scientist in its true form. And she ends up in an orphanage, where she was to take care of the kids, I guess from a medical perspective. And through observation, she ends up developing an educational method for these orphans who were thought to be retarded kids, to be thought to be like kids that just were not at the same development stage as other kids. She develops this fascinating educational method, and it was all based on what I call the well, it's not what I call, what it is it's just the scientific method. At the end of the day, you're gonna hear these concept being called out, the analogy to scientific method many times. She just observed, and then after she observed, then she was a very good observer, and that's where like Montessori starts, is observing the child. So what is Montessori about, in my opinion, is about treating the child with respect, the respect that they desire, they deserve. It's about understanding that kids, humans, are born with an innate ability to learn. We don't need to be taught how to learn. That's a whole, like, that concept is revolutionary for some reason, but it's also so natural because everyone, it's kind of like a given, right? Like kids are given less credit than they deserve. You hear that often, and it's this is what she kind of like discovers, or like makes the world realize. First of all, don't kids don't need to be lectured. They are naturally driven to learn. Okay, so that's one. Well, if they're naturally driven to learn, then what do you need to do to help them in that journey, in that path? And the way that she came about was like, well, first of all, you need to observe, figure out what they're interested in, and then set up the environment where they can follow their instincts on learning and allow them to develop, right? Like, it's kind of like, like, let's just let them be. Let them be, provide the means so that they can be. And as simple as that sounds, it's not. We've been conditioned in a way that we've been told like the exact opposite. And she had to develop a method for how we can go back to basics, how we can go back to the kid is smart. That's how nature made the human being. Then all you need to do is provide an environment that is conducive to this person developing, right? And then it's also about treating the individual as an individual, the kid as a unique creature that requires individualized attention. So the recognition of the individual is very important in Montessori. There is a whole host of fascinating concepts within Montessori once you start with that definition. But I'm giving you like the high level, and I think I'm gonna try to go deeper into some of these areas. But I'm not gonna make the podcast about like the whole Montessori because there is like plenty of materials, and I'm gonna go through like how do you educate yourself, like what are the best resources out there. So we'll touch on that, but I'm just giving you like my thinking here, general high level thoughts. It also Montessori also taught me that the best way to learn, and she appreciated, is hands-on experience with the world around you. So Montessori is big on practical life. A kid cleaning a window, a kid helping you do the dishes, a kid doing their bed, a kid, well, in school they do some different things, but those things, as mundane as they may sound, if you give the kid the ability to just trust them to do those things, they will surprise you. And not only that, they're going to develop into self-driven beings. And the big takeaway from that is, if you stay back, if you just stay away from the natural process, you will also learn something valuable to me, which also gets lost, kind of like gets lost in translation. Education is not only about the academics. Education is not the standardized testing that we're raised around, and that's not it. That's not the only part of education. Education is a lot more than that. So how do you teach independent thinking? How do you teach caring for others? How do you teach self-care? There are all these values that are so important. In traditional education, they're just not really intentionally focused people on them, right? They're not intentionally focused on them. These are like, maybe they try to lecture, but how do you do it in a way that's natural? How do you do it in a way that comes from within, which is what Maria Montessori tries to focus on. And then the other important thing, and I spoke a little bit about this, each kid is a unique person. Each kid has different speeds at which they learn. There is this concept of sensitive periods. Each kid has a sensitive period for learning the numbers, reading, all these skills and abilities that we develop. We know we develop them at different times. Kids have the same thing. Recognizing that happens, it's important in education, and that's what some of those things that Montessori focuses on is. I want Gabby, I want Mila to be treated as an individual and have someone help them follow their path. So in Montessori, you're not supposed to have someone lecturing you about what you need to learn. The kid is driving their educational path. The kid goes into a room that's well prepared, an environment prepared for them, and then they have an instructor, a guide. I think that's what they call them. They don't call them teachers or professors. They don't use any of these traditional terms. They have a guide, and the guy will observe the kid, and the kid is interested in music, so the guy will guide them to those lessons that are more closer to what the kid is interested in. So, musical instruments, different sounds, and that's what Gabby has been experiencing. And Milet also, she just started. She's been there since she was 18 months old or something like that, and she's been loving it. She absolutely thrives in it, and so has Gabby. All right. So what has been my experience? Well, by the way, whenever you come across any Montessori educational reference or schools, they mention a lot of famous people that have gone through the Montessori method. I guess I'll call it out. To be honest, I'm not sure how important that is. It's kind of like those buzzwords that people use to pick your interest. But I'll mention it, and then I'll give you another caveat. Jeff Bezos talks a lot about the importance of the Montessori education in his upbringing. Larry Page and Sergey Brin from Google, the founders, Mark Zuckerberg. There's a long list of famous people that have gone through the Montessori method. Even Bill Gates. So these are like tech billionaires, right? Entrepreneurs. We're fascinated about their story. That's awesome. It's that information is interesting, but it's you have a much longer list for other type of educational systems. So I wouldn't make too much of it, but I would say this: these people that I have mentioned before, there's something common around them, which is these people break the mold, right? These people just think differently. They're kind of like driven by different set of rules, and those are like those values are some of those values that I appreciate and that I want my kids to have. So keep that in mind. So for me personally, it's about breaking the mold, um, or perhaps like for these people there is no mold to break, right? They're just at a different level from a mindset standpoint. Uh, Montessori is also an area of very deep misunderstanding and appreciation. And this is something that I'm going to come to again in the future. So I'm just kind of like warning you that this is something that I'm going to say often. The things that are most valuable in life, and this is actually a fact, the things that are most valuable are not necessarily the most popular. I've 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 scratched my head many times trying to figure out like, hey, like Montessori is so valuable. It's taught me so much. It's helping me my kids become wholesome beings. Why in the world isn't this like the only thing that anyone is ever talking about? Like, why isn't this like a headline like almost every year or every day? But it turns out that the most important things in life, the most important concepts, and here's like the fact, kind of like by definition, they're not popular. Like you're not gonna see headlines about this stuff. This is why I do this, because I think it's important that at least my friends and people close to me, and if it becomes viral through some clever storytelling, by all means, is the greatest thing that's gonna happen in the world. But if it's not popular, it's kind of like a correlation with like how important it is. So just many of the things that I talk about kind of like fall under that definition. Well, let's talk about my experience with my daughter. So my daughters, Gabby and Mila. They are, they're my kids, so obviously I'm gonna speak very highly of them. But they've benefited tremendously from having gone through this. But there is some things that I want to share as well, to things that we need to be mindful of. I'm gonna leave that one to the end. But what have been some of the benefits? I haven't written a long list, so I'm just going by what's in my head right away. The love of learning. My kids, especially my older one, Gabby, she is curious about the world. We talk about like, well, they are just being naturally curious, right? So, but what's been more important to me is I want to make sure that she maintains and she keeps that. And she shows so many signs of that. She is naturally curious about the world, and Montessori has really fed that hunger for knowledge and for understanding the world around her. So that's one of the benefits. So that's kind of like independent and critical thinking goes along with that. Also, Gavi is very independent in the sense that she wants to do things on her own. So she values independence very much, and that's one of the things that she's learned. She doesn't like my help. And I struggle with that still, even though I studied for years. I respect that. And, she's learned things. She's gotten to a point where sometimes she's just interested in something. She doesn't even need my help to help her find how to do something. She just likes figuring things on her own. So that's something that I value. Her interactions with other kids, it's also very valuable. In Montessori, one of the things that they do is they group kids in mixed ages. So I'm not the best person to remember in these exact guidelines on how it is done, but I think it's like 1 to 3 in the same classrooms, and then 3 to 6. The mix, I just think, is also a great thing about how Maria Montessori designed the curriculum, because Gavi got the benefit of learning from older kids. And you know what happens when other kids look at older kids. They just like to learn from them by observation, purely observation, just putting them in the same place. And then when they grow older, then they get the benefit of teaching their younger classmates what they've learned. And the benefits of that is, we all have been through that experience. This is why I'm doing this and trying to articulate all these ideas. And by doing that, I'm taking away so much from it. So that's and then Gabby loves teaching others, showing others how to do something. So her interaction with other kids, it's very healthy. She knows how to engage with other kids in a healthy way, and it's not always perfect. I'm not going to say my kid is perfect, but I am being intentional about how I raise my kid, and Montessori is having a big impact on that. All right, the last thing I'll say, if you're interested, if you're curious, it's not as simple as just saying, "Oh, I want my kid to be a Montessori kid," and it'll just happen. I'll just find a school and it's all set. It turns out what I learned is the fact that school has Montessori on the name doesn't mean that they are a Montessori school. What I also learned is there is kind of levels of how deep a Montessori school goes into the Montessori method. It's not an easy ideal. It's not an easy curriculum to follow. But once you follow it, the benefits are just, outstanding. But most schools, I'm not going to say most schools, I'm not going to give you stats on this, but here's my experience. I live in South Florida, by the way. I live in Miami. It's not easy to find a true Montessori school. And what you'll find is that there is levels at which this school is Montessori, is really following the true principles and teachings of Montessori. So keep that in mind. If you live in South Florida, I can give you some advice. I've actually been to all of the schools. I've taken tours in all of them. I know all of the schools and have a ton of experience on that. As a matter of fact, I work with someone to help me do some research around how to find the best Montessori school. As a parent, as an educated parent that wants to be intentional about Montessori education, it is very important that you educate yourself about the different type of Montessori schools that are out there, because it's not all the same. All right, so those are some of the thoughts I wanted to share. I have a lot more that I didn't cover, but I need to wrap this up. And how we're gonna wrap this up is, I'm going to share with you where to go next if you want to explore deeper. There is one source. I'm going to keep it simple for you because I've researched a lot, but there is one resource for Montessori education that I recommend the most, and that is my friend Jesse McCarthy. His website is montessorieducation.com. He has a podcast. He has a website. He has a YouTube channel. I think also Spotify podcast. You can find him everywhere. I'll share his details on the description. He, in my opinion, is the best resource on Montessori out there. So that's one way to go to explore more. There is also a book that Maria Montessori wrote that Jesse had me read. It's called Maria Montessori Speaks to Parents. It's a small book, it's not a big commitment, but it's potentially like one of the most valuable books on child education that exist. I'll post a link to this book. It's only $15 on Amazon. Amazing book. I mean, I read it like 3 times once I came across it because of how valuable it is. As a matter of fact, I think I'll just dedicate a whole podcast just in the book. I'll do a book review. So that's a resource that I recommend you leverage if you're interested. I also came across a very good book, through my journey of learning more about Montessori and finding school. I came across this fascinating individual. Her name is Judy Dempsey. Judy is the principal, the owner of Summit Cuesta Montessori in Davie, Florida. She wrote a book called Turning Education Inside Out. So this book, very excellent overview of Montessori. What I found most valuable about the book is it gives you a clear contrast between traditional education, what most of us are familiar with, and the Montessori method. So if you wanted to like compare and contrast, because that's kind of how most people learn about something new, that's a very good resource. And then I also wanted to mention that Montessori is just one of many new alternative educational methods that have started to become popular, or like people have followed. There is more. I'll say this about it though, because there is also like homeschooling, right? I haven't come across anything more exciting and more powerful than the Montessori method. And many of those alternative methods kind of like follow some of it. Like they borrow from the books, the lessons, the teachings of Maria Montessori. But there is another podcast that I came across. This person's name is Hannah Frankman. If you're interested more about non-traditional path to education, she has a very interesting YouTube channel, and you can follow her on Twitter. She has a podcast, and I'll link it to the description. She calls it "How to De-School Your Children," and the reason why I reference that podcast is she lists out the exact reasoning behind why I decided to choose the Montessori method and the harms of following the traditional educational system blindly, not knowing exactly what you're buying into. So I'll link it to the description. So I think I got most of what I wanted to share with you. I am happy that I've done this. I am happy that there is a record that my daughter can go back to. I am happy that my friends that start having kids can get to watch this. And I feel this is going to have an impact in many lives that are going to come across this, and that just is music to my ears. It's very satisfying to have that thought in my mind that this is going to help someone like me that was in this position, and they came across my experience with Montessori, and they wanted to know. So I'm gonna be talking more about Montessori as we go along in this journey. But I think that wraps it up for now. Thank you anyone that had a chance to listen to this, and I'll have more content prepared next. So I hope you enjoyed it.